when I worked with Quincy Jones, they brought the Synclavier into this session, and then they called me to come down and to make some sounds for the intro. They already recorded the song, We Are the World, and Quincy says, I want some bells to call everybody to the world, from the world, to come and hear this song. I said, okay. So I started playing around with some bell sounds. And one of them I made up, it's called Shimmer. And then he comes in, and I showed it to him, and he goes, no, those are silver bells. I need golden bells, and left. I'm like, okay, what do I do? Okay, yeah, quick, think. I started messing around with the FM ratios. He comes back in, and he goes, yeah, that's it. So what I'm going to be demonstrating is Synclavier Go, which is it's the Synclavier FM additive and timbre frame synthesizer. It's not an emulation, it's the actual code ported over from the original Synclavier code into the iPad. And it works great because the original Synclavier had 150 odd buttons, and the iPad, being a touch screen, was perfect for the buttons. The original buttons were the buttons used in the B-52 bomber, so they used some really serious, you could really give them a pounding. But the iPad, it works really good. I'm going to just explain a little bit about the way the Synclavier architecture works. The original Synclavier had 4 partials, and you could think of partials, you think of it as a channel. So for each event or key pressing, you could play up to 4 different timbres, 2 different sounds. Additive synthesis, most people are mostly familiar with subtractive synthesis, where you take a given waveform and use filters to filter out the harmonics. With additive synthesis, you start from the bottom. You start from a sine wave. Does anybody not know what harmonics are? Harmonics make things brighter or darker depending on how many harmonics there are. The fundamental frequency the harmonics are multiples of that frequency. I'll give you an example of that. Okay, so I'm going to go on partial 1, and I'm just going to dial in. There's your sine wave. That's the fundamental. Coefficient 1, that's the second harmonic. Third harmonic. Fourth harmonic, etc. All the way up to 12. And you can also highlight several harmonics at once and dial them in. So that is your carrier waveform. That's just one partial. Has a little tap. Change the tap. Oh. There you go. Now you can add FM to that. Change FM ratios. Or jump. So that's one partial. You could have 12 partials. Each partial can actually be chorused or doubled. So theoretically, you can play, I think I was calculating it in my head today, you can play 48 voices under one key. The original Synclavier could have 32 total voices. Synclavier Go is virtually unlimited in the number of voices that you can play. It's all dependent on your processor power of your iPad. Square 1 here. So that's partial 1. So on partial 2, I can design a new sound. Let me change the pitch. Partial 1, partial 2. Together. Okay, so partial 1, if I wanted to add a little vibrato, assign the mod wheel, let's say, of my keyboard here, assign mod wheel to the depth of that vibrato. You can see the little mod wheel going up there on the... You can do things with the part. That's just one partial, so you can do things with the partial, like alternate. Or not, I can pan, but things you can do with stereo are amazing. I add the other partials to that. So that is a two partial, two voice sound. Each of those partials could be chorus. That doubles the voices. So by 12 partials times 2, and then times 2 again, I think it came up with 48. So you could play on the keyboard. That doesn't even move the meter. It didn't even flinch. That's probably 60, 80 voices. I use 20% of the processor power doing that. Okay, I'll couple up a couple of other timbres and show you. This is probably the most famous Synclavier sound known. That was the actual Synclavier sound that was used on the opening of Michael Jackson.
What's the name of that in the app?
Galactic symbol. Galactic symbol. Let's turn it into, that's a 4 partial sound. Let's change some FM ratio. So I talked a little bit about the partial timbre method. So you design your sound that way. Additive synthesis, adding harmonics, and then adding your FM to that carrier waveform. And then each individual partial can have its own. So all those partials make up the one sound. So you can then do things. One really neat thing was that the original voices in the Synclavier were 8-bit. Typical now are like 24-bit. You can actually set this to the default of the 8-bit. Also go up to 24-bit sound, or you can go down to 4 or 6-bit. 4-bit. Add a little more FM noise. Grungier sounding. Okay, let me talk about timbre frames. So, film frames. Same thing with timbre frames. I'll call up a Synclavier Go has a series of preset libraries. The original timbre discs from the original Synclavier. There's quite a few of them. I have a few of my own ones from my Synclavier that I have put in here. Let's go to Resynth. When Resynthesis came out for the Synclavier, you could take a sample, label waveforms of the sample, and then it would, the Resynthesis program would analyze the waveforms and break it down into a series of frames. Let's try this, and this is the famous one.
Kevin.
That was my voice. That was the first thing I had to do is say my name. And
Kevin. Kevin.
If you notice, I play down the keyboard. It's funny. It doesn't slow down like a sample would when you change the pitch. Okay.
Kevin.
So let's go and edit a little bit. Let's go into the frames. Go here. I can solo the frames. So it's a total of 26, 28, 30, about 30 frames. Each one has a different pitch. And let's go into frame 13. Okay, let's extend it. Let's make it last longer. Now let's pitch it up. And then you can also change the harmonics of that frame. Let's do some really high harmonics, get it really going. Let's tune it down. So you go in each frame, change the pitch, the harmonics, and then you can then save that. Let's say we like that sound. Let's go to the library here. Go to save. Let's save it down here. I'll do it and add empty timbre there. So I just saved that one. Okay, you probably saw me working with you see I was dialing in the knob over here. What the knob was is a data entry knob. So Synclavier had the lowest knob per dollar. Had one knob. But the highest button per dollar, because it had over 150 buttons. So when you would pick an editing function, let's say if I wanted to add the sustain of the FM, I would hit that button and just dial it in. You can with Synclavier Go, you can either do it here. Oh yeah, you see it on the screen. Call it a virtual knob. But you can also purchase the Synclavier knob, which is a tactile, and it really makes a difference. It's really, really cool. It just gives you I really feel like I'm working on a Synclavier. Okay, next. Synclavier Go is a multi-timbral device. You can design your sounds, call them up, and assign them to 16 different MIDI channels. This is kind of what we call our mix page. So each sound, I'll go through some sounds here, just at that French horn. I have to change my MIDI channel here. Channel 2. That's a resynthesized English horn. Let's talk about a trumpet here. That is 6. So on the mix page, you can, after you've assigned your sounds, you can then, in addition, from this page, you can change your volume, panning, save that. You can even change some FM amount. This is not, there's no FM on that sound, but let's try the string sound. 9. As you're playing. So from an external sequencer or a sequencer in your iPad, MIDI channels, you can build up your sequence and you can have up to 16 different timbres. So each of those timbres could have 40 voices. You can add up a lot of voices very quickly, but there's no limit. So there's no hardware, there's no limit on the number of voices that it will play back. Then you save your mix so that when you want to call it back up later, you call up your sequence, call up your mix, all your sounds are there. Everything, and each sound, however you edit it, saves with it. So it's not like it's not a preset that you're calling up. You call up a preset, edit it, and it saves it with the mix. So you can have a separate version of your preset. So I was playing this arpeggiated sequence, and every time I let go of the keyboard, the final decay on the sound would have some other kind of different little thing, and it played, most of the time it played the same way. Once in a while it would play differently, which was really kind of cool, kind of quite analog, if you think of it that way. Do we have time for any questions? Anybody have any questions? I guess I can answer them now. Sure.
Integrating with that, the third-party sequencer, that means the Synclavier Go is compatible with what standards then on the iPad?
Interapp audio, audio bus.
And inter-device audio.
Inter-device audio, yeah.
You should talk a bit about that setup, thank you.
Able to link?
Able to link is the other one, thank you, yes.
Yeah.
How many different apps are there? Is there just one Synclavier?
Synclavier Go is the app for the iPad. There's an app for the iPhone. It's called Synclavier Pocket. And it's free just to download and to check it out. And then it's like in-app purchase of a couple dollars if you want to be able to save your sounds and purchase some additional timbre libraries as well. So yeah, it's in for Synclavier for the iPhone. The Synclavier Pocket is. There's an in-purchase app. There are plans to have in-app purchases for Synclavier Go as well. Some artists are designing some sounds and things. They're going to put them in there. So they're not going to be very expensive, I don't think.
The version that you want to buy is Synclavier
Go. Yeah, that's what you're hearing here, yeah.
Have you compared the digital versions with your original?
Yes, I love this question. I still have my Synclavier, and I loaded my timbres. I exported them from my Synclavier into Go, and I did A/B testing, and it's just virtually identical. There's only a little artifacts I noticed were different when you got into the low noise floor, not noise floor, but some low pitched timbres had kind of this digital aliasing kind of sound, and they were a little different, but similar. And I was comparing 8-bit to 8-bit, and I dropped it to 6, and I got it almost identical. It was so close. It added a little bit more of that digital grunge that the 8-bit synthesizers have. And it's amazing. And what's really cool is you can go down to 4-bit or you can go up to 24-bit, which is what we really wanted back in the day. We wanted them to be cleaner, not dirtier. Now everybody wants dirty and and everything. You want it all, right? So great. Question?
When you were resynthesizing your voice, was that just additive synthesis, or was there FM?
No, it's additive. It just broke down the sample waveform and used additive harmonics. That program actually, I think, added up to 128 harmonics. Synclavier Go is 24 harmonics, but the catch with the Synclavier resynthesis, as soon as you edited the harmonics of that 128, you lost everything over 24 anyway. So we couldn't do much with the harmonics at the high range. I think you could do it, and if they called reverse compile the sound, and all the numbers would be in a program. You could go in and type them in, but I don't know if anybody's going to do that these days.
Can the Go app do that resynthesis? Like that?
It plays back those sounds. They have plans of doing that. They're even having plans of adding samples into it, so you can do that too.
Well, it doesn't sample Synclavier Go?
It's not, nothing you heard is not, there's no samples played at all. That was all additive and synthesized.
Record anything then,
No, there's no samples in there.
But you could sample on Synclavier originally, right?
Yeah. Originally, the Synclavier II added monophonic sampling that played back off of a hard disk, and then later when they introduced polyphonic sampling, you could load any of those samples into the RAM and then play them polyphonically, and if you could afford the RAM. It was $4,500 per megabyte back in 1985. People were mortgaging their houses, and somebody told me they decided between a house and a Synclavier and bought a Synclavier. But Synclaviers, nothing could do what that could do. That was, at that time, it was 50K sampling, 16-bit. Nobody was doing that. Later, they introduced 100K stereo sampling. Nobody was doing that. Those and the libraries and sounds and the integration, could do so much that people made it pay for itself. I paid for mine. I rented it. I got hired to sessions. I dragged my rig around. It paid for it. I put about $100,000 into my system, and I paid for it in it was like a 2-year lease or something like that. So, but now it's $29.99.
Should have waited.
I should have waited. I'd be old and gray. Well, I am kind of old and gray. Any other questions? If you have more questions, you think of something later.
So you have full MIDI integration as well, right? So I can use any MIDI controller and control the...
Yeah, full MIDI integration.
I'm just thinking, if those are buttons in the Synclavier app, I mean, something like enable to push or something, you know, or...
Yeah, and we've got plans to support MPE soon. That'll probably come soon that way. So, and we'll do some how-tos. So if you have like a Bluetooth keyboard, or you have an Ableton push, or whatever, this is how you do it. But it is pretty simple, actually, to gear up. We've tried it with quite a few different keyboards.
Oh, the other thing is it responds to polyphonic aftertouch. There aren't too many keyboards that do that, but it will do that. I have a little X key keyboard I was been playing around with. So what that means is each individual key, play a chord, you can change the pitch or the volume or the vibrato of one note will not affect the other ones. They're all independent. It responds to channel pressure as well, which is most of the keyboards that have pressure these days are just, you press one, they all go up in volume or they all vibrato, that kind of thing. We were talking about the keyboards that had it, MIDI board, Kurzweil MIDI board had it, some of the old Ensoniq keyboards had it. The Prophet T8, which was the original keybed for the Synclavier Velocity keyboard, had the polyphonic pressure as well. Somebody's got to make one of those, a new polyphonic aftertouch pressure keyboard.
When you were playing the sequence and you were doing all those changes on the fly as it was playing, can those be automated? Is there a way to automate that stuff?
You would do that, well, not through the app, but you would do that with your sequencer. So you would change your volume, or you can assign any of those stereo functions, volume, and things like that within the app. You can, your mod wheel controller. It responds to pedal 1, pedal 2. There's a ribbon. Is the ribbon controller in there?
Yeah, it's a pedal 1 is channel 7, and then channel 11 expression controller.
Right.
A ribbon, I'm not sure, but we'll be adding more of that too. So you can automate it is the answer, and you can do quite a bit so far. And the reason we put the FM on there as well, because as Kevin was demonstrating, it's like almost like a brightness. So it's like a quick go, I'll make that a little bit brighter, so it becomes a mixed in. And we're going
rather than EQ, you're changing the timbre rather than just filtering out.
Exactly, which you can obviously do in the post-processing anyway. But we're going to add Newman solo, so yeah, you can do stuff on that screen, or you can do stuff in whichever sequencer you're comfortable with.
Is there a sequencer in the app like there was on the original instrument?
No, because there's.
I'm trying to talk Cameron into putting it in.
People do love it, and maybe it's not top on our list because there are other sequencers that do a fantastic job of sequencing. I could show you the Nano Studio, but you guys probably know you can kind of zoom in and edit notes and different quantizations. And, they've got their strengths and weaknesses, but for us to redevelop that would take a lot of development time.
Quick question.
Yep.
To somebody not that familiar with Synclavier, I was just wondering what sort of resources come either with the purchase of this app to kind of get up to speed with how to use it, and then
There's an online, in the app, it's called Tour.
Let me
It's really
Oh, you've got the other screen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just bought it. It's really powerful, this tour.
Yeah. Okay, so the tour is one of well, it's the first tab there, and it talks you through a little bit about the history on page 2.
That's page 2. Yeah.
A little bit about how to set it up. There's more information online, and then all of these other pages they focus on a particular panel. So whilst this is overwhelming for someone who's new to it, and Kevin has obviously been using it for 40 years, so he's like a wizard. It has that learning curve, and once you get over that initial learning curve, it's a lot quicker to use than other traditional synthesizers. But anyway, you just press the question mark if you want to learn about this panel, and the buttons are still there for you to press and test out what that's doing whilst you're reading about it. And then you just press the question mark. Oh, I want to know about vibrato. Oh, there's the information. And we really want this to sort of go far and wide and educate people about FM synthesis and younger people that maybe don't know so much about it, as well as additive synthesis. So there's a lot of detail in here. Typically the first part of the page is like stuff you really need to know, or you wouldn't find your way around the app. But then you can delve deeper and deeper and deeper. And if you know, and there's tons of stuff online too. But as Kevin has shown today, there's a lot of depth to it. So yeah, that's at your fingertips, and we just thought that was much better to have it in the app. If you've got 2 iPads or you've got a computer, you can look at those tour pages online too. There's PDFs. So that, yeah, good question. That's resources.
Great. Well, thank you very much. It was fun. Had a good time.